Hello everyone, my name is Srijit Kunil. I am a chartered accountant by professions and a director of Pravasi Tax. Under the Pravasi Tax channel, we took an initiative to address most of the tax issues of NRIs, PIOs and OCA's perspective. And I've been taking this class regularly on Zoom platforms for last 3-4 years. But after a point, we realized, okay, why can't we take a YouTube channel so that many NRIs, many PIOs, many OCI across the world, they get benefits of this particular video. That's our initiative. Please do support this channel. Please do subscribe so that we will be releasing more and more interesting videos for NRIs and PIOs and OCI's perspective. Today, one important question what we are going to address: is it really mandatory for NRIs to file tax return in India? These are common questions. Most of the my NRI funds initially they ask, Srijit, is it something mandatory for NRIs to file tax return in India? So my answer, straight away answer is no. It is not at all mandatory for every NRI, every PIO, every OCI to file a tax return in India. Having said, there are some conditions. There are some conditions is required to meet. If you meet such conditions, it is mandatory you file tax returns. Now let's analyze what are those conditions applicable for NRIs which become mandate for them to file tax return in India. Here I would like to highlight an important point. Section 139(1) of the Income Tax Act actually not distinguishing an individual whether he is a resident, whether he is a non-resident. An individual person, if he earns or meet certain condition, it is mandatory for him to file a tax return. Let's evaluate each conditions. First condition, if an individual, his taxable income from a financial year means April 1 to 31st March is the financial year in India. In that particular financial year, if your taxable income exceeds a maximum amount which is chargeable to income tax, that means, for example, for financial year 22-23, the current financial year, the taxable income slab is actually start from 2.5 lakhs. So that means if your taxable income exceeds 2.5 lakhs, it is mandatory you need to file a tax return. Now the question comes, what is taxable income for an NRI in that particular financial year? We have done a separate video. What are the kind of income is taxable for an individual NRI from India? So you can watch that video so you get an idea what are those category of income is subject to tax in India. If your taxable income exceeds 2.5 lakhs from these category of income slot, then it is mandatory you file a tax. That's the first basic conditions. There is no difference whether is a resident or a non-resident, both are required to file a tax return in India. Now we discuss the income. Now recently the income tax department has shifted the focus from the income to expenditure. Now there are two category of expenditure. If you are going to incur from India, it is mandatory you file a tax return in India. So that was first one is your electricity bill. In case if you incur more than 1 lakh rupees per annum electricity bill, that means even per month your electricity bill cross 8,333 rupees, it is mandatory you need to file a tax return in India. So the property might be in your spouse name, your parents name, your own name, but an NRI should ensure if you are spending more than 1 lakh rupees per annum electricity bill, it is mandatory you file a tax return in India. Now the third condition, if you incur foreign travel expenditure more than 2 lakh rupees, that means if you spend from India towards a foreign travel expenditure, if it exceeds 2 lakh rupees, it is mandatory you file a tax return. So these are the three major conditions commonly apply for NRIs to become a mandatory you file a tax return in India. There's another one more condition is there. If you deposit more than 1 crore rupees in your current account, it is mandatory. But having said that, conditions may not be relevant for an NRI. This is something mainly applicable for those people who carry business in India. So we have discussed these major 4 conditions. To summarize, we have discussed those 4 conditions, right? Taxable income 2.5 lakhs, your electricity bill 1 lakh rupees per annum, and your foreign travel expenditure 2 lakh rupees, and your current account deposits more than 1 crore. So at least for the first three conditions, it become mandatory for an NRI to file tax return in India. Wait a minute. There was an amendment in 2022 year. So what was the amendment is notification 37/2022. It came on 21st April 2022. Very interesting notifications, especially for NRIs. Very, very important notifications. In a financial year, your deposits means your credit to particular bank account, that bank account, not one bank account, one or more bank account of that particular individual. Also, please ensure the bank account, the nature of bank account is savings bank account. It could be your NRE savings bank account, it could be your NRO savings bank account, it could be your resident savings bank account. Many NRIs still maintain resident savings bank account, maybe in the name of themselves or maybe in the name of their spouse or parents. Please ensure in a financial year, if it touch 50 lakhs or more in aggregate, that means 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs, 30 lakhs, all put together, if it touch 50 lakhs or more, it is mandatory you file a tax return in India. This is something very, very commonly applicable for NRI. In a financial year, your total transferred money to your bank accounts in India, any of NRE, NRO account, if it touch 50 lakhs or more, it is mandatory you file a tax return. This is a major amendment for NRI. And one more conditions came, especially on the TDS and TCS. TDS is basically tax deducted at source. TCS is tax collected at source. Most of the NRIs actually do share tradings, and eventually most of the share trading will resulting into the TDS amount. Even from your, if you deposit even 10 lakh rupees in a NRO bank account, you get the interest income. That interest also subject to 30% TDS. So all this TDS or a TCS in a financial year, if it touch 25,000 or more, then also it is mandatory you file a tax returns. So in the first initial time, we discussed the taxable income, electricity bill, and your foreign travel expenditure. In addition to that, your deposits touch 50 lakhs in a financial year, and also TDS and TCS touch 25,000 rupees also become mandatory to file a tax return. The TDS part, I would like to highlight one important point. If an individual is at the age of 60-year-old, his TDS even up to 50,000 rupees, it is not mandatory. But having said that, relaxation applicable only for a resident individual, not for an NRI. So that means NRI still, even you cross 60-year-old and your TDS touch 25,000 rupees, it is mandatory you file a tax return. This is a common conditions applicable for an NRI community. Having said, there are other conditions also there. For example, in a financial year, your professional receipts touch 10 lakhs or more, it is mandatory you file a return. Similar way, if your gross receipts from business exceed 60 lakhs, also mandatory for file tax returns. But this is something applicable for a common perspective, not for an NRI. So this particular video, at least you get an idea when a NRI is required to file tax return in India. If you miss to comply this particular section 113 and 1, there are other consequential impact will be there in the income tax perspective that we will be covering in future videos. But I think this video is useful for NRIs, and we will cover one more video, very interesting video. What are the benefits available for an NRI even though it is not mandatory to file a tax return in India? So that we will be covering the next video. What are those benefits available for an individual NRI even if you don't fall within these mandatory conditions? Thank you for watching this video. We will be releasing more and more similar videos for NRIs, and please subscribe our channel so that you will get the notification as and when we release more interesting videos for NRIs. Thank you so much.